You hear the wind before you feel it. A low, hungry howl, not just cold, but ancient. It scrapes the wooden walls of the hut like claws. Inside, it's pitch dark. No fireplace, no glowing embers, just 6 people, wrapped around each other like tangled roots, trying to breathe silently, not to waste warmth. Outside, winter is not a season. It's a predator. This is not Game of Thrones. This is real. Welcome to a forgotten village in 14th century England, where the nights weren't just cold. They were lethal. Where peasants didn't have the luxury to go to bed, they had to survive the night. No central heating, no wool socks, no insulation, just fear, tradition, and a few brilliantly bizarre tricks passed down over centuries. Let's pull back the curtain and step inside one of those huts. Mud walls, thatch roof, no chimney, just a small hole in the ceiling, enough to let the smoke from a tiny fire crawl out. The smoke lingers though, thick like fog, coating everything in soot. Why? Because that smoke, irritating as it is, helps. It keeps away fleas, lice, and spirits. Yes, spirits. In the medieval mind, illness came not from germs, but from demons, bad air, and curses. But on winter nights, there was something more immediate to worry about than superstition: freezing to death in your sleep. So how did they make it through? First, let's destroy the modern fantasy of a 4-poster bed. Most peasants didn't have beds. If they did, it was a wooden frame with a sack of straw, often shared by multiple family members. But more often, they slept on dirt floors covered in hay or rushes. The floor itself was sometimes dug down like a shallow pit, with the belief that heat settles lower. Sound primitive? It was, but it worked, sort of. Now, here's where it gets unexpectedly clever, and a bit shocking. They didn't sleep alone, not even close. Peasant families, bundled together, often several generations in the same bed, sometimes even with livestock. Chickens, dogs, and yes, even pigs were brought indoors. Why? Not just to protect them from thieves or wolves. Because pigs give off a lot of body heat. A single adult pig can produce the same heat as a small fireplace. So imagine curling up with grandma on one side and a snorting hog on the other. Cozy? Maybe. Sanitary? Not exactly. But when it's minus 10 degrees Celsius outside and snow leaks through your thatch roof, you don't get picky. And then there's the night shirt, not the elegant Victorian sleepwear you're picturing. In medieval times, people often slept naked, even in the cold. Why? Because clothes were rare, and you wore them during the day. Getting them sweaty at night meant you'd wake up damp, and in winter, damp meant death. Instead, many opted for shared blankets, often made of coarse wool or animal skins, and shared body heat. And yes, that led to all kinds of side effects. There are documented cases of entire villages struggling with lice infestations so bad that people slept with onions in their shirts, believing the smell would drive pests away. It didn't. But there's more. The medieval night wasn't one long stretch of sleep like today. There was something called segmented sleep, People would go to bed after sunset, sleep a few hours, wake up around midnight, and stay awake for 1 or 2 hours, praying, talking, even making love, then sleep again until dawn. That middle of the night period was called the watch. Some used it to stoke the fire. Others used it to tend to livestock, pray, or get into mischief. Monasteries even structured prayers around this split. Why did this happen? Because without artificial light, the body's natural melatonin cycle took over. Humans weren't made to sleep 8 hours straight. The long medieval night gave people 2 sleeps, and between them, an eerie window of half-waking life. Still think it was all boring mud huts and gloom? Let's pivot now to the real killer, famine. Winter wasn't just cold, it was hungry. Food ran out, crops had failed months before, and storing meat was nearly impossible. Salting was expensive, smoking needed wood, so people did desperate things. Mothers would chew old leather, then feed it to their children like jerky. Bone broth wasn't some hip health trend, it was boiling the same bones over and over. Sometimes for days, until the last bit of marrow dissolved. In lean years, that was all a family ate. There are records of people baking loaves from tree bark, mixed with ground roots and a few grains, barely enough to be called bread. Some even roasted straw. Others, tragically, didn't survive the season. And yet, people did survive. Not just by enduring, but by adapting. They used everything. Animal fat rubbed on the skin as a primitive insulator. Urine-soaked rags wrapped around boots to trap heat. Insane? Maybe. But desperate times forged inventive minds. And then came the inns a rare source of heat in stories. For a penny, you could sleep on a straw mat near the fire, not in privacy, but shoulder to shoulder with total strangers. They called it the common sleep. In the dark, breath fogging the air, you might hear a traveler whisper stories of ghosts, war, or lost love. These weren't just beds, they were oral history machines. But even if you couldn't afford an inn, you might wander to the village church. In some regions, churches allowed the poor to huddle inside during extreme cold. Not for worship, for survival. They called it taking sanctuary from the frost. Sometimes, the only thing separating life from death was the open door of a stone chapel and the dim warmth of a candle left burning. And now, let's talk about death. Because here's the quiet part people forget about medieval winters. People expected some to die. That was just how the season worked. The village priest prepared extra shrouds. The gravedigger's busiest time was January. And yet, life went on. Children still played in the snow. Couples still kissed under the eaves. Humanity, somehow, endured. What does that say about us? That maybe comfort makes us forget how hard we used to fight just to wake up in the morning. And we're only getting started. In the next part, we'll explore how medieval people fought not just the cold, but disease, darkness, and each other, in a world lit only by fire. The cold was only half the war. The other half? Darkness. Not just physical darkness, but fear, isolation, and a world without knowledge. Imagine a winter evening where the sun sets at 4 p.m. And from then until dawn, there is nothing but blackness. No TV, no radio, not even a candle for most peasants. A candle, back then, cost the equivalent of a day's wage. Light was a luxury, so most people sat in the dark, with their thoughts, their prayers, or their demons. And the medieval mind? Oh, it believed in demons. Winter was the season of the dead, and not just metaphorically. People believed that the boundary between the living and the spirit world thinned when the earth froze. Strange sounds at night? That wasn't the wind, that was a restless soul. Or something worse, it wasn't just folklore. Entire village behaviors were shaped by it. That's why doorways were often lined with iron horseshoes or branches of holly, not decoration, but protection. If your child woke up screaming from a fever in the night, it wasn't illness, it was possession. And if you didn't act fast, the thing might not give them back by sunrise. Now, put yourself there, in the dark, huddled in the straw, listening to the wood creak, wondering if the cough from your brother means he's sick, or cursed. This constant fear didn't breed weakness. It bred rituals. Medieval winter life was a clockwork of strange customs, some helpful, some haunting. People slept with knives under their pillows. Not for defense from thieves, but from witches. Villagers buried iron nails under thresholds to prevent evil spirits from crossing into the home. Bread baked on certain days, like the Feast of Saint Lucy, was believed to bless the house and protect against the biting frost. And here's the wild part. Science now shows some of these traditions accidentally worked. Iron in nails could deter certain pests. Smoke from fires really did kill parasites. Fermented grain drinks, like crude medieval ale, were often safer to drink than water. Not because they knew microbiology, but because ritual bred survival. Let's talk about one of the strangest winter survival rituals, the midnight scream. In parts of rural Europe, it was common for villagers to shout, just once, into the darkness at the stroke of midnight. The reason? To scare away death. One voice was chosen each night. Sometimes a child, sometimes an elder. A single, loud scream into the cold. It sounds theatrical, even mad, but to them, it was essential. A defiance, a way to say, not tonight. And now, let's shift to something much more practical, but just as brutal. Winter labor, Because survival didn't mean resting by the fire. It meant working, constantly. Men chopped wood until their hands bled. Women repaired roofs, spun wool, and tended to animals, all while nursing infants in the same breath. Children, barely old enough to speak, were tasked with feeding animals. gathering dung for fuel, or breaking ice in the well with their bare hands. And let's not romanticize this. The cold cracked skin until it bled. Frostbite wasn't rare, it was expected. You might go to sleep with 10 toes and wake up with 9. And no one would scream. There was no hospital, no rescue. If your fingers blackened, you wrapped them and kept milking the goat. You either endured, or you didn't. And yet, here's the twist. Winter was also festive. Yes, despite the suffering, winter was the most sacred season of the year. Because of Christmas, not the jingle bell kind. The real, raw medieval Christmas was a wild mix of holy reverence and drunken revelry. It was one of the only times of year when peasants were allowed, even encouraged, to feast, sing, and rebel. Lords handed out scraps, churches offered ale, mummers' plays, crude theatrical sketches mocking kings and priests, filled halls with laughter. And in some places, peasants even crowned their own lord of misrule, a fake king who ruled the manor for a day, turning order upside down. For that one blessed moment, the cold was forgotten, hunger paused, even the strictest manors looked the other way while servants drank too much and played obscene songs on borrowed instruments. It wasn't just celebration, it was release from the darkness, from the fear, from the crushing silence of survival. But all of this, the joy, the madness, the scream into the void, circled around one truth. Winter was a war, and every villager was a soldier in it. They didn't have central heating, but they had ritual. They didn't have antibiotics, but they had superstition. They didn't have thermal codes, but they had each other. So the next time you turn up your thermostat or sip cocoa by the heater, remember this. Somewhere, some peasant mother once clutched her newborn under a damp wool cloak, praying not to God, but to the pig beside her, to stay warm enough through the night. Still think history is boring? In Part 3, we dig deeper into what peasants actually ate to fuel their bodies through frost and famine. Spoiler: it wasn't all turnips and bread. Some meals were delicious, some were disgusting, and some were deadly. Forget Instagram-worthy stews or warm winter pastries. For the average medieval peasant, winter dining wasn't about flavor. It was about not dying. And sometimes, what ended up in the bowl was more shocking than the cold itself. Let's start with the basics. Grain, barley, rye, and oats were the backbone of the medieval peasant diet. But here's the catch: flour was not white, fluffy, or clean. It was coarse, dark, and full of surprises. Bits of grit from millstones, bug eggs, mold. If you were lucky, your bread was just tough. If not, it gave you St. Anthony's fire a horrifying illness caused by ergot, a fungus that grows on rye and causes seizures, hallucinations, and sometimes death. Yes, in winter, peasants accidentally tripped on natural LSD and thought they were possessed by demons. But you ate it anyway, because the alternative was nothing. Now imagine this. It's January. The last of the autumn harvest is gone. There are no fresh vegetables, no fruit. You're down to stored grains, salted scraps, and root vegetables so shriveled they resemble mummified toes. Welcome to the medieval pantry. And yet, somehow, they made it work. Take pottage a catch-all stew made from whatever you had. On a good day, leeks, onions, bits of salted meat. On a bad day, ground acorns, wild herbs, and boiled straw. Yes, boiled straw. Some recipes called for tree bark shaved into slivers and boiled with oats to add fiber. And no, that's not a joke. In times of deep famine, villagers turned to something called famine bread. It wasn't bread, it was desperation in loaf form. Ground up bark, crushed roots, dried beans, even powdered bones, anything remotely starchy, baked into dense, gray bricks that would sit in your stomach like stones. Eat too much, and you'd vomit. Eat too little, and you'd starve. You had to find the balance between poison and hunger. Now, let's talk meat. Most peasants rarely tasted it, and when they did, it wasn't fresh. Cured pork or smoked fish were winter staples, if your village could afford salt or smokehouses. Otherwise, meat came in a more unsettling form. Carrion, that's right. Sometimes, Meat came from animals that died of disease or froze to death. Legally, you weren't supposed to eat them. But practically, when your child hasn't eaten in 2 days, legal becomes a luxury. Villagers skinned the carcass, cut out the maggoty bits, boiled the rest to death, and hoped it wouldn't kill them. Sometimes, it did. But even in that bleakness, there was ingenuity. Take blood pudding, fresh animal blood mixed with oats and spices, boiled into sausage, a winter miracle, rich in iron, warm, filling, and made from a waste product. Nothing was thrown away, not lungs, not kidneys, not even feet. Everything was boiled, stewed, scraped, or fried in leftover lard. Now here comes the twist. Despite the bleakness, some winter foods were downright gourmet by accident. Ever heard of medieval cheese? Peasants made rough, sharp cheese from goat or sheep milk, stored in cloth or animal stomachs. Yes, actual stomachs. These cheeses fermented through the winter and developed wild, tangy flavors, like a medieval blue cheese. Pair that with dark rye bread and sour apple cider, and you have something that modern foodies would pay top dollar for. They also brewed ale, not just as a beverage, but as food. Peasant ale was low in alcohol but rich in calories. It was cloudy, warm, thick, and sometimes the only meal people had all day. Children drank it, pregnant women drank it. In some regions, babies were baptized in it. Because clean water? That was more dangerous than beer. But nothing, absolutely nothing, says peasant winter cuisine, quite like gruel. Boiled oats, a pinch of salt, sometimes a splash of animal fat. That's it. Gruel was so basic, so repetitive, so sad, that it became a medieval insult. Calling someone a gruel eater was like saying they had no taste. No wealth, no status, but peasants didn't care. Gruel kept them alive, and sometimes, survival was the only flavor that mattered. Still, there was one rare treat that broke the hunger. Honey, sugar was virtually unknown, but honey? That golden miracle from bees? It sweetened bread, healed wounds, preserved fruit, and lifted spirits. A spoonful in hot ale turned it into a posset, a rustic winter cocktail believed to warm the blood and ward off disease. In some villages, honey was currency, and it could mean the difference between a brutal night and a bearable one. And speaking of bears, yes, some northern communities did eat bear when they could trap one. Tough, oily, and dangerous to catch, but nothing beat the calories. The skin became coats, the bones became tools, and the fat, rendered into candles or rubbed on the skin to prevent frostbite. In that sense, every meal was more than food. It was a fight. A fight against the cold, against disease, against despair. When you swallow something that smells like boiled socks, but it keeps your child alive? That's not just dinner. That's defiance. But let's not pretend everything was noble. There are whispers in old chronicles of something darker. In years of famine so severe that even bark soup ran out, there were reports, hushed, denied, but persistent, of cannibalism, not monsters, not murderers, just parents, starving, desperate, left with choices that no human should ever have to make. Are the stories true? We may never know. But what is true, beyond a doubt, is this. Medieval peasants survived not because they had enough, but because they refused to die. And they carried that hunger, and that will, into everything they did. In Part 4, we'll go beneath the floorboards, literally, and uncover how peasants built homes that were cold, filthy, and full of secrets. What was hiding in the walls might shock you. And what they used as toilets, even more so. Close your eyes and picture a medieval peasant home. No, not a cozy cottage with roses around the door. Not even a log cabin with a warm hearth. Think mud, wood, dung, straw, a structure so thin and porous, you could hear the wind whispering your death through the walls. That was home. Most peasant houses were simple one-room huts. One room, that's it. No bedrooms, no privacy. Just dirt floors, sometimes literally just dirt. Walls made from wattle and daub, woven sticks smeared with mud, manure, and straw, and a roof that leaked every time it rained, or snowed, or breathed too hard. The floor? Littered with hay, animal droppings, food scraps, and insects. There was no cleaning schedule. There was no broom. Your bed was a pile of moldy straw. Your pillow? If you were lucky, a sack of old grain. And if not, your arm. But it gets worse. Because you didn't sleep alone. Peasants often shared their homes with livestock. Chickens under the bench, pigs in the corner, a goat sleeping at your feet. Why? Because animals gave off heat. And in the dead of winter, a pig was warmer than a husband. They called it bedfellow warmth. And it wasn't strange, it was smart. Your sheep might be the only reason your baby survived the frost. But sharing your room with animals came at a price. Parasites. Asterisk. The peasant home was paradise for fleas, lice, ticks, and rats. They lived in your bedding, your hair, your clothes. They nibbled your skin while you slept and laid eggs in your seams. If you itched, too bad, you just kept working. Even worse were the diseases they carried. Typhus, plague, skin infections that turned flesh black and bones soft. All hiding in the corners of your one-room life. But wait, where did people go to the bathroom? You might wish you hadn't asked. Some peasants dug simple pits outside. Others used wooden boxes lined with straw. But in winter, many simply used the corner of the house, yes. Inside, human waste was sometimes dumped near the walls or tossed into the yard. And the smell? You got used to it, or died trying. In cities, it was common to shout, "Gardes l'eau," watch out for the water, before dumping waste from upper windows. In villages, they didn't bother shouting, they just threw. Whatever landed where, stayed there. But not all homes were nightmares. Some families developed clever tricks to stay alive and semi-comfortable. One of them was the sleeping shelf a wooden plank near the ceiling where the youngest or most vulnerable family members were laid to sleep. Why? Because heat rises. It might be 5 degrees warmer up there, just enough to prevent death. Another was the hearth trick placing a flat stone near the fire during the evening. Then wrapping it in cloth and putting it beneath the bedding. Think of it as the peasant's hot water bottle, but with soot. Still, no fire meant no comfort. But most peasant homes didn't have chimneys. Smoke from the hearth simply rose into the room, filling the air. Black soot coated every surface. Eyes watered, lungs burned, babies wheezed in the corner. It wasn't just unpleasant, it was deadly. And yet, they kept the fires burning. Because fire was life. Without it, food didn't cook, water didn't boil, spirits didn't lift. But here's something that might shock you. Many peasant homes had no doors or only had fabric flaps. Wood was expensive. Hinges were rare. Some villagers used woven mats or hanging furs to keep out the cold. And to keep out others. Because yes, theft was common. Even among neighbors. If you were starving and your neighbor had a pig, you didn't ask. You waited for night. A quick slip inside. A slice of meat. And gone. Homes were defenseless. Justice was brutal. If caught stealing food, you might be branded, mutilated, or worse, exiled. Now imagine raising children in this. No privacy, no hygiene, no insulation, just endless cold and constant noise, animals squealing, babies crying, wind howling, pots boiling, lice crawling. And still, people made memories there. They sang lullabies in that filth. They whispered prayers before sleep. They told stories by flickering firelight. Passed down through generations. That one-room hovel? It wasn't just a shelter. It was a universe. Weddings happened there. Births. Deaths. All in the same 15 square meters. And if you listen closely to old folktales, some say the homes themselves were alive. Walls that creaked warnings. Roofs that moaned in storms. Floorboards that remembered secrets. One superstition held that every death in a house left behind a shadow not a ghost. But a memory so heavy. It bent the very beams of the ceiling. Whether you believe that or not, one thing is certain. Peasant homes were more than hovels. They were battlegrounds, where love, death, disease, and survival all slept under one rotten roof. So next time you complain about a small apartment or weak Wi-Fi, picture this. A dirt floor soaked in pig urine, your grandmother giving birth by firelight, and a rat stealing your last potato. Still feeling fancy? In Part 5, we uncover the social codes of the medieval peasant, rules so invisible, so strict, That breaking them could mean exile, or execution. You'll learn why stepping on the wrong patch of land could get you cursed. And how your neighbor's gossip might end with someone burned at the stake. You think medieval peasants had no rules? Think again. Their lives were ruled by more laws than any king's court. But these laws weren't written down. They lived in whispers, glances, and generations of repetition. Break one, and you wouldn't go to jail. You'd be cursed, shunned, or buried in silence. Start with the land, asterisk. In most villages, you didn't own land, the Lord did, you just used it. But how you used it was a sacred ritual. There were invisible boundaries. You tilled only your strip, harvested only your assigned row, accidentally step over a furrow, and it might start a feud that lasted generations. Why? Because land meant life, and in winter, a single stolen beet could mean your child lived while your neighbors starved. So even stepping into someone else's turnip row was a declaration of war. But it wasn't just about what you did. It was about when you did it. Plant on the wrong day? Curse the moon's phase? Cut hay before the bell rang? These were seen as inviting disaster. The rhythm of life followed ancient, often pagan, calendars. And violating that rhythm was not just taboo, it was considered an attack on the entire village's luck. Then there were superstitions. Not quaint ones, powerful, paralyzing beliefs that shaped daily life. You don't sweep the floor after sunset. You don't bake bread on the wrong day of the week. You don't look a midwife in the eyes when she leaves a birth. You don't whistle near the woods, ever. To modern ears, it sounds like folklore. To a medieval peasant, it was survival, because behind every rule was a fear of bad harvests, demonic possession, or divine punishment, And yes, possession wasn't just a church thing. It was a village thing. If a girl cried too much, a boy fell ill, or a cow gave sour milk, people didn't look to germs. They looked to witches, And here's the disturbing part. In many villages, witch didn't mean a stranger. It meant someone you knew. The old widow who lived alone. The woman who helped too many births. The man who walked too often at night. One wrong look during a funeral, and you could be accused. No trial, just whispers, then rocks, then fire. It wasn't about guilt. It was about fear maintenance, Keep the group pure, keep the village safe, even if it meant sacrificing your own. Then there were gender laws silent but suffocating. A woman could not speak in the communal field without being called loose. A man who did not join in public drinking could be called a coward. Men ate first, women served, children kept silent unless spoken to, laughed too loudly, and people would call you godless. Everything was ritualized. The way you nodded, the way you walked past elders, the way you spoke to someone one social tier above you, even if they were just slightly better off. Even the placement of your house tools could be read as a message. A broom leaning the wrong way by the door might signal laziness. A cracked pot on the windowsill could mean you were offering yourself to strange spirits. People watched each other, and no one watched more than the gossips. Medieval villages ran on gossip. It wasn't entertainment, it was control. The local busybody knew who had too little grain, who drank too much ale, who argued with their spouse, who bled too long after childbirth. And if a rumor stuck, you were marked. There's one recorded tale from 14th century Kent. A man was falsely accused of sleeping with a goat. He denied it. The goat was examined. Nothing was found. But the whispers didn't stop. Within 2 winters, the man had lost his wife, his land, and finally his life, dead in a ditch from exposure. All because someone started talking. But not all rules were cruel. Some protected the vulnerable. There were customs of shared bread if a neighbor ran out of flour. It was expected someone would lend. If a child was orphaned, the village would raise it. These weren't laws, they were obligations of the soul. Break them, and your harvest might rot. No one would say why, but everyone would nod. Then there were rituals of the dead. You didn't bury someone before sundown. You didn't cry too loudly, or you'd draw more death. You had to cover mirrors, stop all clocks, and feed the crows. Some villagers believed that if you didn't feed the birds on the day of death, the soul wouldn't fly free. And yes, many peasants believed in souls. But not just human ones. Trees had souls. Stones remembered things. The wind could speak. One record from Bohemia tells of a man who insulted the forest by relieving himself near an ancient oak. That year, his family's sheep died. Coincidence? The village didn't think so. They burned his house. That's how it worked. Quiet rules, loud consequences. And all of it happened not in castles, not in cities, but in tiny villages with names lost to time, where the snow fell quietly. And behind every smile might be a secret. In part 6, we reach the final layer of survival. The inner world of medieval peasants. Their dreams, their nightmares, and what they believed waited for them after death. If you thought their waking life was dark, wait until you see what they imagined in the night. By day, they toiled. By night, they dreamed. But medieval peasant dreams weren't like ours. They weren't fantasies of wealth or escape. They were warnings. They believed dreams came from the spirit world. That what you saw in your sleep wasn't fiction, it was a message. Sometimes from the dead, sometimes from God, sometimes from something darker. Dreams of wolves meant betrayal. Dreams of falling were seen as demonic temptation. And if you dreamed of teeth falling out, death was near. So peasants slept light, not just because of the cold or the rats or the livestock noises, but because the night was haunted. Even the act of falling asleep had ritual. Some crossed themselves 3 times. Others whispered prayers not from the church, but passed down by grandmothers in corners of dirt floor huts. Some slept with iron under the pillow, a nail, a blade, a horseshoe, to keep out the night walkers. Spirits that crushed your chest in your sleep and whispered doubts into your soul. These weren't just stories. People died from them. We now call it sleep paralysis. They called it the old crone, or the night mare, from which we get the word nightmare. A heavy thing sitting on your ribs, sucking out your will to live. Some claimed to see it in the firelight. A woman with no face, hunched, whispering in a tongue no one recognized. So sleep was not rest. It was risk, but it was also hope. Because in sleep, peasants believed they could visit the dead, speak with lost parents, ask advice from ancestors, or plead with saints for mercy. There are recorded stories of villagers waking in tears, having seen a child lost to the pox, warning them to bury a certain object or face plague. Sometimes they listened, sometimes they didn't, and sometimes they dreamed of heaven, but not the shining, golden paradise of cathedrals. Peasant heaven was familiar, a warm field, a long table, all the animals you lost, all the bread you never ate, a place with no lords, no frost, no hunger, just enough. But they also feared the other place, hell was not abstract, it was visceral, fire, yes, but also endless hunger, rotten teeth, mud too deep to walk through. The sound of children crying but never being able to reach them. Rats that talked, the faces of neighbors twisted in agony. A bishop laughing in the distance. You didn't go to hell for murder. You went for forgetting to feed the poor. You went for mocking the dead. You went for working on feast days. And worst of all, you went for dying unremembered, That was the deepest terror, to be forgotten. To die nameless. To rot under dirt with no candle lit in your name. That's why they told stories. Why they whispered prayers for generations gone. Why they carved initials into beams and scratched symbols into the soil. Because remembrance was salvation. Even in poverty. Even in cold. Even when lice crawled in your wounds and your belly echoed from emptiness, you still mattered. If someone remembered your name. And so, history remembers them. Not kings. Not crusaders. Not lords with gold. But the peasants who survived in silence. The girl who walked 3 miles barefoot to fill her bucket. The boy who froze to death curled around a lamb. The mother who gave the last crust of bread to her child. And never woke up. They had no tombs. But they had stories. And now, you carry one of them. So tonight, as you sleep in your warm bed, in your safe room, behind your locked door, imagine the fire going out. Imagine the wind crawling through the cracks. Imagine the long night ahead. And the dreams waiting in it. Not boring at all, is it? Because sometimes the quietest history is the loudest.